and all points in between. We're happy to have you looking in tonight in our Wednesday night Bible study. And I appreciate all of you, those of you who are overseas, those of you in Africa. We're glad you are tuned in as well. Tonight, I am deviating, as I've already announced to the class. I'm not going to go over into chapter 9 of Revelation. I want you to turn to Psalm 83, and we're going to talk about the war there. Now, I will say to you that Bill Salas is the man that I have provided for you the ethnic breakdown. Bill has taught for years, and I really didn't buy into it. I've always kind of thought this war mentioned in Psalm 83 had already taken place. But he insists that it has not. He's put out a book, which when I talked to him in Orlando back at the Prophecy Conference, I ordered the book. The book had not actually been released. I just got it recently. And in looking at that and reading it in light of what is taking place tonight, I'm convinced that we are in the beginning of Psalm 83's war. Could be wrong. I'm not willing to die on that hill, but the similarities they're just too close to ignore. So I'm going to read Psalm 83 and invite you to read along with me as we go. And those of you at home, get your Bibles and read with us. This is a psalm of Asaph. He was David's close friend and worship leader. And he wrote several of the psalms. And he says, "Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be still, O God. And be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against you. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal, Ammon, Amalek, the Philistines, with the inhabitants of Tyre, Asher, also is joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot, Selah. Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin, at the brook of Kishon, which perished at Endor. They became as dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb, like Zeb, yea, all their princes as Zebah and Salmunna, who said, Let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possessions. O my God, make them like a wheel, as the stubble before the wind, as the fire burns a wood, and the flame sets the mountains on fire. So persecute them with your tempest, make them afraid with your storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and troubled forever. Yea, let them be put to shame and perish, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the Most High over all the earth. Now, I'd like you, someone needs to return those papers. I was reading. I got to have one to go by too. I didn't have all this in my memory. Pardon? I need, just as long as I've got one of each. I apologize for the print being, I'll get to the list of the combatants here in a moment. What I'd like you to do, Put here in Psalm 83, turn back to Revelation chapter 8. Because we almost finished chapter 8 last week. We were talking about wormwood, the star that falls from heaven, which I believe. Again, now understand, I'm telling you I believe. When I'm telling you I believe, I'm giving you my opinion based on my best study. But it is that. So if I tell you I believe that, I'm not telling you like this is lead pipe cinch, book, chapter, verse. It is my opinion from my study and from the Word. I believe the wormwood here in Revelation chapter 8, verse 11, is Apophis that NASA said will hit the Baja Peninsula on April 13th, Friday the 13th, 2029. Now that's NASA's prediction, which also coincides with a vision God gave Tom Horn. And Tom woke up from his dream so moved that he talked to a friend that he had in NASA. It surprised his friend, said, "How did you find this out?" He said, "Well, God showed it to me in a dream." And in point of fact, this star, Apophis, is scheduled to hit Earth along the Baja Peninsula before, it'll work in a minute, California and Mexico. And it will be catastrophic. And it is confirmed by NASA that this asteroid will hit. Now, what's significant about that is that Apophis is an Egyptian god of chaos in antiquity. And this asteroid, NASA, Apophis. So, as we said last week, if indeed a pre-tribulation rapture is true, and if indeed we are nearing the 7-year tribulation period and this star falls in the middle of the tribulation period, or 3.5 years into it, then you just do your math. And we're close. Okay? Now, if you go on the next verses, I thought I had to deal with this before because I want to go back on into chapter 9 next. If you do the math, 1/3 of the world's population will die. That's almost 3 billion people at current levels of population. Now, I want to go from that to what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the slaughter. We don't know how many yet really have been killed. And while we're here tonight, they're being killed. And who knows what the final death toll is going to be. If what we're seeing open up is this theater of war, take up your ethnic verse. Now remember, Matthew 24, Jesus said nation would rise against nation. Signs of the last days. Remember, in Matthew 24, Jesus has asked 3 questions. When will these things be? That is the destruction of the temple at Jerusalem. He said, there's coming a time not one stone will be left upon another. They said, well, when will this be? Second question. What will be the sign of your coming? Third question. And the end of the world. They're not the same. And I see this all the time. Well, we're nearing the end of the world. No, we're not. We're not anywhere near. We're at least 1,000+ years from the end of this world, but we are near the coming of the Lord and the revelation of the Antichrist. Matter of fact, it's upon us. And I'll just tell you this is not Bible, this is not anything, but as the pastors and I were praying yesterday, I began to feel a little electric shock. If you've ever had a little gentle shock going over your body. And I said, guys, this may be me, but I'm feeling this tension all over. And then last night, Margaret and I were sitting, and I had an overwhelming spirit of foreboding. And we just began to break out in a spirit of prayer for you, our families, and our nation, our world. Something's about to break. I say that out of my spirit. It didn't come down from Mount Sinai, and it wasn't carved in stone. I'm just telling you, I'm convinced we're on the verge of something catastrophic. Exactly what that will be, I think we may be looking at it, but again, my opinion, that's just what it is. But remember, when Jesus answered those questions, it was only a little less than 40 years that the destruction of the temple was fulfilled. The Jews were dispersed around the world. Now, the second sign is, what is the sign of your coming? First thing, anybody know without looking what the first thing he warned was? Who? Where did you say that? Deception. Verse 4, Matthew 24. Take heed that no man deceive you. And 3 times in Matthew 24 and 25, he warns against deception. A deception so powerful, if it were possible, it would deceive the very elect. Now, I have an opinion on that too. I don't believe that means that the very elect's faith won't be shaken. I do believe we will feel that tug. Listen, this deception is, well, it's deceiving, and because it's almost the truth, but not quite. Very subtle. And only the discerning will know the difference. Some good people are going to be totally taken in because they have very little or maybe zero spiritual discernment. Some people, if anything looks supernatural to them, must be God. But it isn't. But notice what he says in your notes. I give it to you in Matthew 24, verse 7. This is not a war between nations. King James translates it nations, but the word translated here, nations, is ethnos, ethnic groups. Most of the wars in the world right now are not between nations, although there are some. They're between ethnic groups. And that's a sign of the coming of the Lord. Now, I missed my very first point about Asaph revealing the conspiracy, how they have conspired together to do what you and I have heard in the news for years. Wipe Israel off the map. Push them into the sea. The demonstrations taking place. Did any of you see the demonstration in Sydney, Australia? Gas the Jews. Gas the Jews. Gas the Jews. Our wonderful educated professors and students of Harvard calling for the destruction of Israel, stomping on the American and Israeli flag. I noticed one group said, queers for Hamas. Did you see that? Did you see the other little girl in her blue jeans cut-off shirt and her low-cut dress, and she's out there cheering for Hamas? They would cut her head off if she had sense enough to know what she's cheering for. The biggest thing about these is they're educated beyond their intelligence. So are their professors. And they're God haters and they're America haters. And anything that brings down America, they're for. So, but you notice one thing. The real fight is with God. Here in the first 5 verses, Asaph nails it for them. Sir, how's that throat?
Coming closer.
Thank you.
I think we're also dealing with enemies within
Without
every
question.
nation, because such an attack will not take by surprise a nation that has got the second best world intelligence service. That's one thing. The other thing is there are so many security barriers and checks between Gaza and Israel and the surrounding areas that I find it impossible that they didn't know that something was being planned, especially something this large.
I've got something on that when you finish.
Okay. And there's also political interests within Israel, because there's been struggle for years. This doesn't make it to this side of the world unless you read Israeli press. There have been heated debates for years because Netanyahu has been amidst some corruption for almost a decade, and some of them want to take him down because of that. And there's also the danger of him wanting to have district attorneys and basically the judicial power on the legislative. So that will that will unbalance the powers in Israel. So all in all, I think this is my view from my analysis, my perspective, that there's an enemy within Israel that's favoring all these things to happen because...
But there's no question, but let me point out so we can move on. If you've been paying attention in Israel, there have been demonstrations in the street, thousands demonstrating against Netanyahu. It is my belief that distracted the security forces of the Israelis. But just before I came in here tonight, I was listening to Mark Levin, and he revealed that there's one of the chairmen of our House Intelligence Committee has been contacted by Egyptian authorities saying they warned 2 days ago before the invasion that something big was coming out of the Gaza Strip, and it was ignored in Israel and it was ignored here. Now, the Mossad and their intelligence is supposed to be the best in the world. Even our intelligence agency acknowledges such. So there's something nefarious going on. Come right to you. He's following up.
Why would they take 6 hours to reply to this attack? Well, the Navy took care of the sea and they did their job immediately. The Army didn't. They waited 6 hours. That's something very significant too.
There's some questions yet to be answered, yes.
Did you say that they knew 2 days
I'm saying the Egyptian, before the invasion, the Egyptian authority says they warned Israel and us that something big was coming out of the Gaza. Now, with the type of invasion force that they came in with, it would have been impossible to have missed it, because there's over 1,500 Hamas soldiers or fighters laying dead in Israel tonight, which is part of this prophecy. And I'll get to that. But now, look, keep your eye on this, because it's going to get widened. But like I said in the opening of the little pass out, people are striking at Israel. Their real goal is God. When God put Adam and Eve in the garden, every time Satan looked at Adam, it reminded him of God, because he was made in God's image. And it made him remember what he had lost. Well, he could no longer strike at God, so he struck at his creation. He's been striking it ever since. If you want to know why you're having such a hell of a time, I can tell you right now, Satan hates the God in you. And he's striking at the God in you, trying to destroy you to get back at God, because you are his special creation. And so when you get all down in the mouth and you feel like, what's the use? Understand what's going on here. So he's still striking at us. Now, look at the 10 ethnic groups that are listed between verses 6 through 8. Bill Salas lays out for us the ethnic groups. To understand, these ethnic groups are there, but they're not necessarily, these are not national boundaries. So they overlap into modern countries. The tents of Edom are the Palestinians, and the southern Jordanians, they live in tents. When I was in Israel the first time, we stopped on our way down from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea area at a Bedouin's tent. And we had tea and visited with them, and they still live in their tent. And our guide told me, Benji was his name, he said the federal government wanted to help these Bedouins, so they built them, and he showed us an entire housing project they built for these Bedouins. So what did they do? They brought their camels and animals in the house, and they still lived out in their tents. because it's a way of life. That's one of the big failures of American foreign policy, because we've tried to Americanize every place we've gone and failed to recognize the indigenous culture. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about our way of life. They're about like you and me. We'd just like to be left alone. Trouble with that is the devil ain't going to leave us alone. Anyway, tents of Edom, which they still live in tents, many of them. Ishmaelites, that is the Saudis. Moab, Palestinians and Central Jordanians. Hagarenes, the Egyptians. Gabal, northern Lebanese. Probably, he says maybe, I would say probably Hezbollah. If you've been following this carefully, Hezbollah has started firing rockets from Syria, which would open up a two-front war, but it's not just going to be a two-front war. It's going to be an all-sides war. Ammon, the Palestinians and northern Jordanians. Amalek, now, let me stop there long enough to say, if Saul, the first king of Israel, had obeyed God, they wouldn't be here. God sent Saul down because of the sins of Amalek against his people and said, wipe them out. He wouldn't do it. He would not do it. He could not bring himself to wreak out the vengeance on the people of God, but he backslid so far that chasing David a little later, he killed 83 prophets of God and their families trying to get David, which should show you the progression downhill when people begin rebelling and disobedient to God. But if Saul had obeyed God, which he insisted that he had, and Samuel said, why do I hear these sheep and cattle? And we would have never had the story of Haman trying to hang Mordecai, because he wouldn't have been there to do it. Yes. Loudly, please.
We wouldn't be in this mess if Abraham would have obeyed God.
You done hit me with that. I can't do nothing about Abraham.
And we wouldn't be in this mess if Adam would have obeyed God.
Yes.
That's the one, but Abraham, God sent
I wouldn't be in this mess if I'd eaten more properly over 74 years either. They don't do me a bit of good tonight.
you a son. So that's the problem.
That is Amalek, Philistia, that's Gaza, where Hamas is attacking now. Tyre, southern Lebanese, you may remember that was where the prince of Tyre set up that hindered the prayer of Daniel. And then Assyria, the Syrians and the Iraqis. These are the 10 confederations that conspire to wipe Israel off the map. If you notice verse 4, I put it in your notes. Here's what they want to do. They've said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. Now, about a year before I was born, May 14, 1948, when Isaiah's prophecy of a nation being born in a day was fulfilled by a vote of the United Nations, and the little fledgling nation of Israel was created. There has never been a country or a nation named Palestine. They cannot go back and find a nation named Palestine. Now, the Romans named the entire region Palestine, but there was no nation. As a matter of fact, in 1948, when Israel became a nation, Tel Aviv was a desert. Today it's one of the most technologically advanced modern cities in the world because of the industrial attitude of the Jews. The prophecy that God gave that the desert would blossom like a rose. They have cabbages the size of our basketballs. I mean, they've also now found that down by the Dead Sea, where nothing would grow, that dates happen to do very well. So they're planting dates down there. I've seen the groves. The Palestinians, as I said, they were Bedouins. Now, there are at least 12 nations around the little tiny nation of Israel, about the size of New Jersey, that wanted to absorb and would have absorbed the Palestinians. They wouldn't have it. They wanted Israel off the map. And they're not going to be put off the map because God's going to see to it. But a lot of bloodshed yet to come, a lot of tragedy yet to come. And if you're in Israel, a jet plane can fly over the nation in 8 minutes. So that's how little prep time they have to prepare for an attack. I'm with Brother George on how they got caught this flat-footed, but they'll have to sort that out right now. They got to fight for their lives. We're watching it. Sir, go ahead.
The other point I wanted to say
Before I so rudely interrupted you, go ahead.
going along those lines is that Israel made a huge mistake of supporting Hamas in the past and helping its creation, thinking that Hamas was going to eliminate the organization for the liberation of Palestine. And they created a monster, and now they have to deal with that.
Well, the fact that there's 2.3 million people in that little strip, it's one of the most densely populated areas in the world. And what you're seeing Israel do, and I've been glued to the reports between what I've had to do my other chores, and watching them systematically try to destroy the infrastructure of the city. The Hamas has gone underground, so they're just now trying to take out the infrastructure. But the bottom line on it is it's ungovernable. And finally, Israel has said, we're going to wipe them out. We're not going to go pick them and let them come back. And I hope they do. Now, if they do, here it is. Look at what the prophecy says. Any other questions or comments, by the way? We had a lot of good discussion last week, and I love that. Look at Roman numeral 3, the prayer Asaph goes for their destruction. He says in verse 9, do unto them as you did the Midianites. That is Gideon. Or Sisera, that's Deborah's fight. Jabin, the book of Kishon, which perished at Endor. They became, watch this, they became as dung on the earth. It's exactly what the dead Hamas soldiers are becoming right now. They haven't buried them. We're 5 days in, going into the 6th day, as the disciples told Jesus at the tomb of Lazarus, behold, he stinketh. And I've noticed that in the little village, I've forgotten the name now, where they killed those 40 babies and beheaded them, and killed 260, that they're bringing the bodies out and they're already decomposing. And it's a terrible task. The bodies are not intact. And all Israel's concerned about burying their people. So they're leaving Hamas people, at least 1,500 that they found. Nobody worrying about burying them. They're becoming as dung on the earth. Now, stop a minute and contemplate. This is what we're seeing is beyond our sensibility. Imagine 1/3 of the world. Who's going to bury him? The 2/3 that remain will be real busy trying to survive. 1/3 of the world's water supply is turned to blood in the oceans. Everything in the ocean dies. 1/3 of the ships at sea are lost, probably with all hands on deck. Springs and rivers of America and the world, 1/3 of them will turn to blood. And then it comes down to, well, do we really believe this or not? I do. That's the reason why I got my reservation in. in the New Jerusalem, Hilton. Plan on being gone. Y'all stay and watch it, Hilton. I'm sure Fox will do a great job. There's only one way to escape it, is we die before the rapture or we go in the rapture. Now, Bill Silas believes, and I do too. Does that make it so? No. But just look at current events and look at the prophecy and then put two and two together, you'll get 6. Here we are. I believe this happens before the rapture. Indeed, I believe we're seeing the beginning of it now. I believe it's going to escalate. I believe Hezbollah will enter the conflict. I believe Syria will as well. And I believe several of the other, Iran is pulling the strings from behind the scenes, giving funding and weaponry and training. And that's 4 of these 10 that are actively involved. Just keep your eye on it. It's worth studying. Yes.
One thing that I remember, because I'm like you, I've been following it, is in 67. God took 6 days, and he settled it.
Pardon?
He settled it. He gave them a
He did indeed.
miracle. The whole war was over in 6 days. That's kind of miraculous. It was 6 days.
Well, it was. And there were reports of Israelis being surrounded over 100 to 1. And the Egyptian tank commanders and Syrian tank commanders looked up and saw something and ran for their lives, left their equipment right there and ran for their lives. I may not know exactly what they saw. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob showed up. But now there's a difference. Those were nation states that were poised to attack Israel, and Israel hit them first. They didn't wait to be attacked. Now, this intelligence failure, you may not be old enough, Brother George, to remember this. You're only about, 21, 22? 1973, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Yom Kippur, caught Israel with their britches down. They were totally unprepared, and they overran the Israeli forces and almost got to Jerusalem. And Richard Nixon, everybody over here thought Richard Nixon was trying to divert attention from his Watergate, but he wasn't. He had troops at Fort Bragg bivouacking by their planes, ready to go in the Middle East to fight for Israel, to save them. But we rushed, like we're doing right now, armaments to them. They turned the tide. They began driving the Egyptians. They crossed the Suez Canal and surrounded Cairo. And Brezhnev called Nixon and said, if you don't make them stop, we're going to blow them off the map. And Nixon told them that would not be a wise thing to do, but they got a stalemate. And Israel had Egypt and returned to their borders. Those of you who remember this will remember not long after that, Sadat was assassinated during a parade in his country because of the humiliation. These people are not like any people we've had. The closest thing to them has been the Nazis. That we've, well, I don't know. Mao was pretty rough. Stalin was bad. But understand something, that as we were here tonight, and I don't know how many people even remember this, during World War II, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem traveled to Germany and met with Hitler. They made a pact. Hitler would destroy the Jews in Europe. The Mufti would destroy the Jews in the Middle East. And of course, the Mufti backed the wrong horse. But the bottom line, folks, listen, forgive me if I'm not spiritual enough for you. I'm sorry. These people, I've read the back of the book. Hallelujah, we win. Yeah, and a lot of hell between Revelation 1 and Revelation 22, and billions die. So I'm glad we win. But don't go shouting around the rose book Bush as though there's nothing coming. Hey, we won World War II. How many people died? But this battle is coming to us. It ain't just going to be over there. Our borders, the CDC, now you hear numbers like this. They say 7 to 8 million have come across the border. The CDC that gave us the mask and says 57 million. 57 million illegals have come across that border. They're coming across right now while I'm talking to the tune of thousands. 18 to 20,000 a day, 30, 40,000 or more in a week. We don't know who they are, but we've caught 300 known terrorists. We don't know how many gotaways are in the country. We also know, if you don't know, you better know, there are smuggled suitcase bombs hidden in strategic points in America where sleeper cells are just waiting for the signal.
The United Nations is backing all that?
Sir?
The United Nations, you think they're backing it?
The United Nations are part of the plot to let the illegals in, to destroy our culture, to bring us down to where we're no more powerful than anyone. They don't understand this. Antichrist, and I've preached this for 50 years. Antichrist can't rule the world with a strong, free America. So something has to happen to our power, and something has to happen to our freedom. And this current Nazi administration is doing everything it can to destroy this nation. They are fundamentally trying to change the United States of America, and they're doing it. And they have undermined every moral ground this nation stands on. Marriage, mutilating our children, culture of death that kills through abortion, euthanasia, destroying our agriculture industry, our oil industry, and they're trying to bring us down to where we're totally subsistent and subservient to a central government. And I don't have time to go into all that plan, but I can. But I'm telling you, it's happening before our very eyes. And we need to understand this. I heard, what did you say about Friday?
That the terrorists that
I can barely hear you, sir.
terrorists that are in our country have been given command to do jihad here in the United States.
Let me say it loud. She's saying, and your source was over the news. It was said that the terrorists are calling for a jihad in the United States this Friday. This Friday. And I hope we show them a little Southern hospitality
And if you notice,
with some hardware. Go, pardon? Go ahead.
that this is the Cleveland County Schools have changed the parades and the football games from Friday to Thursday
This week?
They just done
That'd be tomorrow night. Sir? You know it is. I hadn't even put that together. It really is. I hadn't put that together. Huh? I'm sorry? I've got to go to Georgia in a minute. Go ahead.
I was going to say with this gentleman's remark, we were listening to whoever it is at the United Nations, and he started out like he was condemning the
Oh,
very
Guterres.
far into it was bad on him.
Yeah. These people hate Israel because they hate God. You know, and they can't find it in, it's hard to say anything positive unless you're one of these fool college kids that would support what Hamas has done. But they try every way they can. I promised George I'd come to you, Curtis, and then you're next.
Well, I was going to say what Sister Margaret said, that the Hamas leaders called for a jihad all over the world in the main cities on Friday. So,
See, I didn't know. I was at the doctor when this was announced.
yeah, so there's callings all over the world for people not to gather in large numbers and for people to be alert in main cities, because there's going to be strikes on Friday.
Well, look, I go back to what I just said. It doesn't take a genius to extrapolate that. Antichrist has to destroy this nation. We're not in Bible prophecy. That means something's going to happen to us. And so we are not in Bible prophecy. So that means something's going to happen to us. Either we're nuked, or we're so weak we can't make a difference, or we're ruled by Antichrist. One of these three things going to happen to the United States, if not all three. And I'll just drop this into, and then I'll go to Curtis. I believe that God raised up the United States of America, since you can't find us in prophecy, to do two things. This is Woodard, okay, my opinion. I believe God raised us up to be the seat of world evangelism. We have been the strongest missionary power in the history of the world, number one. Number two, to be a protector of that little country in Israel. And since we're backing away from both of those, I think there's going to be hell to pay. I think Curtis, and then I'll come to, yes.
Two questions. First question, is the United States military doing anything right now to help Israel? And the second question, you talked about people being deceived. Could that be because, like in America, of all the different denominations we got, and the standard teaching they teach?
Let me take the first one, you reiterate the second. Fox News reported that SEAL Team 6 is in the Middle East. If they get the green light, but rescuing those hostages will be well nigh impossible. Because the first thing you're going to have to do when an enemy takes hostages is to count them as dead.
And why would they announce that?
I don't know. It's very foolhardy to do, but so if Israel doesn't invite us in, it's very difficult for me to see Beijing, Biden doing anything over there. But now, what's your second question?
Second question is, you talked about people being deceived. Here in the United States, we've got so many churches that believe so much stupid junk about the Bible, and they leave so much out. How can they not be deceived?
Well, two things to that, and I want to get to everybody else's sisters as well. We are the most biblically illiterate generation that's ever inhabited America. Immigration built this country. I have no problem with immigration. But not the immigration we got now, because it's not immigration, it's an invasion. But the people who came here in my younger days, and even before, they loved America. They wanted to assimilate and be part of our culture, and they would fight for the country. This group don't love America. They're Americans. They don't want to learn language, and they're marching under other countries' flags. So with that kind of balkanization of this nation, we no longer can stand. United we stand. Yes.
I seen Amir cross party earlier in the day. He said he had massive drone attacks coming in from Lebanon and Syria. You done mentioned that. Could that possibly be that Ebola has done entered the fight?
I think so. And they're already doing surreptitious things. It just hadn't come all out as Hamas has done. Look, this may not be this Psalm 83 war. It's sure looking like it to me. But let me move on. Who's next? Sissy.
Martha said something about Friday the 13th being this.
No, my brother here did.
Okay. What is with that? I've never heard anything about that.
We can't hear. But
No, I
going
mean,
to
I've never heard
jihad,
Well, you won't hear everything in the news.
can't hear you.
Did you get an answer? I didn't.
No, I did not.
Well, then you ain't gonna get one. Glory to God. No, I don't know the significance of it being Friday the 13th. They're just saying, and I didn't hear the announcement, taking the word for it, that the Muslim terrorist leaders have called for jihad. It sounded like a mule brand to me, but nonetheless, they've called for it, which means they wreak havoc in violence, burning, and sound like some of our groups over here to me. Now, there's somebody else wanted in. Okay, I'm lost now. My brother, didn't you want to say something?
When you're talking about immigration back in the old days, everybody had to go through Ellis Island
Yeah,
to get to the nation. And they separated families back then.
sure they did.
Wasn't healthy, you know.
And if you didn't have a skill or some way you could contribute to society, you were rejected. Now, people are coming here for the welfare. Well, I've said for years, and you probably can relate, I don't know why we're going to outer space to look for life. There's no intelligent life in Washington. So we could spend some money trying to find intelligent life there. Let's go back to our study. And anybody jump in when you want to. This is good. The significance of these groups entering the fight, I'll give you two references, Isaiah 17 and Jeremiah 49, which predicts the total destruction of Damascus in a conflict with Israel. And there is an indication that they'll be wiped out in one night. Now, Damascus is the oldest continually inhabited city in the history of the world. But Jeremiah and Isaiah prophesies their total destruction. Now, Syria's messing around in this battle, but they haven't come full bore yet. If they do, I would look for this prophecy to be fulfilled. Now, Israel has been bombing in Syria for some time. Targets in Syria. This is a very volatile thing. The thing about taking on Iran that is scary, their nuclear facilities are deep and fortified. And I don't even know if some of our bunker busters can reach it. But Israel is backed in the corner, and it looks like they're there. They're the place to realize now they're going to have to fulfill their promises of never again. And you know, my dad, we used to hunt a lot. And so you get an old dog, wasn't worth nothing, and he'd be a coward. But if you chase that old dog home, he'd turn on his porch and he'd bite you because he got no place else to go. And that's what Golda Meir reportedly told our current president on a visit. We will fight because we have no place else to go. So when I was there, I was afraid to say this. I mentioned it, though. I said, I believe God used the Holocaust to get the Jews a homeland. And I didn't know if I was going to be rocked, but they said, oh, no, we totally agree with you. That's what it took for the world to be sympathetic enough to let them have their land. But that sympathy turned very fast against them. All right, I'm about to the end of my, sorry. Yes, sir.
In your opinion, will U.S. troops become involved in this war?
In this war? I don't think so. My opinion is no. I think that's saber rattling. I don't think we want. Look, we're up to our eyeballs in Ukraine. We're going to have to do something. If you were Xi Jinping, looking at the current weakness of our leadership, and you had real desire to grab Taiwan, would you wait to the next election? No, you wouldn't. You'd go right now. You'd roll the dice that this president's not going to do anything. So I look for something to break. I don't know if we'll even have another election. I look for something to break between now and then. Yes, sir.
You always say that this president that we got won't do anything. He can't do anything if the ones that are in office don't let him do anything.
Oh, he can do a lot.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he can do a lot. Look, Johnson took us into Vietnam with a executive order. Kennedy has it's still on the books that John Kennedy put in an executive order that he has the authority to move Kings Mountain to Idaho if he deems a national emergency. He could confiscate your car, your phone. The president can do that with a stroke of a pen. Now, let me finish and I'll let you follow up. If he declares war, 30 days? 30 days he can do it until he has to come to Congress and ask for a declaration. But he can get us into that conflict. Yes, he can. I mean, look at all the executive orders Trump signed.
Okay, you look at it. These congressmen and all of them up there, they making $269,000 a month.
You ain't gonna get me to defend them.
What they make.
Sir,
That's what they make. And you hear me?
I'm listening.
Okay, the government can be shut down. I'm sorry to get off on this opinion.
That's all right.
The government can be shut down, but they still getting their pay.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of mess is that? So what do they love? It's all about the
Yes,
love.
I'll tell you what they love. I'll tell you exactly what Washington loves. Power and money. That's their God. That's their loyalty, with very few exceptions.
That's why our country is in this state of mind.
That's one of the reasons. And here's the deal. But you're right. If you believe in the Constitution, obviously this group doesn't. But the Constitution of the United States says all the spending of the government must originate in the House of Representatives, not the Senate, not the hands of the president. So you're exactly right. The chaos we've got right now in the House is pathetic on both sides. Well, you know what? They're fighting over their turf. If you're a congressperson, the moment you get elected, you're starting to raise money for your next election. And that's all they care about. Yeah, that's all they care about.
Do you think that our emergency alert we had last Wednesday was, what was that about? Kind of like,
You know that that secret's already sold. Okay.
I told you then, I don't know that something nefarious wasn't going on, but I don't trust the government. I don't trust them. All the things that they're doing, even the ones that talk right, what they do is what you better watch. And look, guys and gals, we're so far down this rabbit hole, I think we're circling the drain. That's what I think. And does that make it so? No, don't make it so. But maybe you study it as much as I do. If you study it as much as I do, you could not be optimistic. You could not be optimistic. And you're right, our leaders have sold us down the drain for money. For money. Yes, love.
now, if this is indeed the Psalm 83, how long do you think it'll take for all these players?
I think it starts falling in place within days or weeks. I put it in the last of your notes so you could take it home with you. This is not Ezekiel 38's war. Ezekiel 38 enumerates the nations that come against invade Israel. Nothing there is said of these ethnic groups. Could it be that they're wiped out in this war? If these ethnic groups, Hezbollah, Hamas, which is what Israel's trying to do, wipes them out, they're not part of the coming invasion led by what we believe is Russia, maybe Turkey, to come into Israel when Israel's at peace to, the Bible says, King James, take a spoil. And there's a lot in Israel to profit from. But we're not looking at Ezekiel 38 here. We're looking at a war, if indeed this is it, that stands on its own merit, which means understand that that last verse is the goal of Asaph's prayer And it should be all of our goals that the world finally recognizes who is the one true God. Yes, sir.
Israel has nuclear weapons, right?
Oh, indeed. And that's what Silas believes, and I have no reason to really contradict it, will take out Damascus. If Israel is facing destruction, they're going to use those weapons. And we know they're going to survive. But now you jump over to, if you do look at Ezekiel 38, that's beyond any question a nuclear exchange there. They have enough weaponry to pioneer and fuel their energy needs for 7 years. It takes 7 months to bury the dead from that war, and they employ full-time hazmat teams going through looking for body parts. That's nuclear exchange, or chemical too, probably both. All right, I'm almost on your nickel. Any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say something about,
Take up an offering.
what Blair was saying, about these politicians. You know, we have the right to, vote them out, but I don't.
But we
think a lot of
don't.
People know that. And if we don't know our rights, we don't have any rights. And that's what they're trying to keep us from knowing our rights. Every time they have a bill, for one bill, it's all these 500 pages, and nobody's going to read that.
Including the politicians.
I know. You know,
Well,
that's kind of why one of the reasons why we're in the shape we're in. We won't stand up for our rights and do what is legally our responsibility.
well, I talked to a local politician about running for Congress against McHenry, which I like Mac. I just, he said, I don't have $1 million. So that's what you're talking about. To unseat an incumbent politician takes millions. Notice that almost all of them are millionaires. Poor folks ain't got a chance. Well, some were not. You're right. Yes, ma'am.
I've been going to a lot of city council meetings and voting things. At one precinct here in East Mountain, they only had 20 people to come vote. At another precinct, they had 1.
Ooh.
At another one, they had 6.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Okay, the reason being, they look at it as though they're gonna do what they want to anyway.
Yeah, that's too bad.
But that's the way people look at it. When they
My
look
attitude
at
is if you don't vote, I don't want to hear anything you got to say.
people will not vote.
Charlotte Mecklenburg just had an election a month ago. Less than 10% of the city.
And look how
So
big
if you won't vote and help us change it, just shut up.
Look how big Charlotte is.
Well,
Yeah.
this makes me sad because we have to compel our lost loved ones to get right with the Lord. We can't just rock on like, well, wait a minute, they're gonna solve this. I mean, what if this is a really 83? We are right here at seeing the Lord come, and some of our people are not gonna be ready to meet him.
That's exactly right. Okay, any last comments before we cut loose? Yes, ma'am? Sure.
The city of Kings Mountain is getting ready to have their re-election.
Yeah. I've already met with one of the councilmen. Well, he called and wanted to meet with me, but
The ones that's got money, they don't worry. They don't worry.
I got a feeling there are some very comfortable people on that.
They are, they call it the good old boys club.
Matter of fact, last time I was to pray the invocation, I nearly prayed, Lord, we thank you for all these wonderful restaurants we're enjoying since we were told we needed liquor by the drink. And Lord, I want to thank you for that expensive trailer park we've got down there on Dixon School Road that supposed to do such. I know I should have, but that's really can't stand me. Love you people. Appreciate you being here. Hope I irritated you to no end. Good night, everybody. All you folks online, thank you for tuning in and love you. Good night.